Good morning all. Today's our topic is continuation of uh, orbit, 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 and it's now we are discussing the extraocular muscles. Here the muscles, types of the extraocular muscles. Here the voluntary models for recti, superior rectus, inferior rectus, middle rectus, lateral rectus, and two obliques, superior oblique and inferior oblique. The levator papillae superior elevators the upper eyelid. Involuntary muscles, the superior tarsal muscle is the deeper portion of the levator palpebrae superioris. It is inserted into the upper margin of the superior tarsus. Here the figure of the orbital fascia and the facial sheath of the eyeballs, and here the second figure is facial sheath and the eyeballs, and here is the third figure is the apical part of the orbital showing the origin of the extraocular eyeball. Now here the second is inferior tarsus muscle extends from the facial sheath, the orbital bridge in the inferior orbital fissures. Now it is voluntary muscle origin. The four recti arise from the common annular tendon or tendoning ring of the gene. The ring is attached to the middle part of the superior orbital fissure. The lateral rectus has additional small tendinous head to which arise from the orbital surface. As here the superior orbital oblique arise from the under surface of the lesser wing of the sphenoid. The inferior oblique arise from the orbital surface of the maxilla, and the levator palpebrae superiors arise from the orbital surface of the lesser wing of the sphenoid bone. Now its insertion, the recti can inserted into the sclera lateral posterior to the limbus, and average distance of the insertion from the cornea is 7.7 mm, superior 7.7, inferior 6.5 mm, medially 5.5 mm, laterally 6.9 mm. Now this is a figure of the scheme of the the insertion of the oblique muscles, and the figure is the scheme of the of the nerve supply of the extraocular muscle. Here the second the tendon of superior obliques passes through the fibrocartilaginous puli attached to the trochlear fossa of the frontal bone. The inferior oblique is fleshy throughout. It passes laterally upwards and backwards below the inferior rectus and deep of the rectus. Lateral rectus. The flat tendons of the levator splits into a superior or voluntary and an inferior or involuntary lamina. The nerve supply obliques is supplied by the forecranial or facial nerve, and the lateral rectus is supplied by the sixth cranial or abducens nerve. The remaining five extraocular muscles supplied inferior or medial recti muscle. Actions: movement of the eyeball around the transverse axis, upward rotation or elevation 33 degree, downward rotation depression 33 degree, and around the vertical axis medial rotation and abduction 50 degree, and lateral rotation or abduction 50 degree around an anteroprotusial axis, insertion, intorsion and extorsion. The rotatory movements of the eyeball upwards, downwards, medially, laterally, defined in the terms of the direction of the movement of the center. The movements gives above can take place in the various combinations. Action of the individual muscles showing in the table. The single of the pure movement or produce combined action of the muscle, and forward upward rotation and elevation superior rectus and inferior obliques, downward rotation inferior and superior obliques, inferior rectus, and medial rotation abduction, medial rectus, and superior rectus and inferior rectus. Lateral rotation, abduction, lateral rectus, superior oblique, and inferior oblique. Insertion by the supplied oblique, superior rectus, and exertion by the inferior oblique and inferior rectus. Combined movement of the eyes. Normally, movements of the two eye are harmonious coordination. Such coordination movement of the both eyes are called conjugate ocular movements. Now it's clinical anatomy. Weakness or paralysis of the muscle causes a squint or the strabismus, which may be connect, concomitant of the paralytic. Concomitant squint or the congenital, there is no limitation of the movement. The nystagmus is characterized by the involuntary rhythmical oscillatory movements of the eyes. Now vessels of the orbit. Ophthalmic artery origin. The ophthalmic artery is branches of the cerebral part of the internal carotid artery, give of middle to the anterior coronary process. Course and relation. The artery enters in the orbit through the optical canal. The orbit the artery pierces in the durameter, ascending over the lateral side of the optic nerve and crosses above the nerve to the lateral or middle side along with the nasociliary nerve. The terminal near the medial angle of the eyes by the dividing into the supraocular and dorsal nasal root. Branches. While still with the dural sheath, the ophthalmic artery gives off the central artery of the retina. The central artery of retina. The central artery of retina is the first and most important branches of the ophthalmic artery. It first lies below the optic nerve. It pierces the dural sheath of the nerve and runs forward for the short distance between these two. Yes. Here the figure of the film shows the action of the extraocular muscles. Now branches of the rise for the lacrimal artery. Branches give lacrimal gland. Two zygomatic branches enter canals into the zygomatic bone, and lateral palpebral branches supply to eyelids, and in the recurrent meningeal branches or backward to the enter the medial fossa, and muscular branches supply the muscles of the orbit. The branches arises from the main trunk. The posterior ciliary artery supplies chiefly the choroid and iris. Now this is the figure of the muscle, different type of muscles action and its arrangement. Here the figure of again the muscles of the movements of the eyes. Here the table of the individual muscles actions. Muscles vertical axis, main action on horizontal axis, and anteroposterior axis. Here the superior orbital branches supply in the skin and forehead. The anterior and posterior ethmoidal branches enter foramen into the medial wall of the orbit, and the medial palpebrae branches supply the eyelids. The dorsal nasal vessels supply the upper part of the nose. Now it is clinical anatomy. The anterior ciliary artery arises from the muscular branches of the ophthalmic artery. The central artery of the retina is the only arterial supply. Now ophthalmic vein. The superior ophthalmic vein, it accompanies the ophthalmic artery. It lies above the optic nerve. Now then its receive tributaries corresponding to the branches of the artery and passes through the superior orbital fissures and drain into the cavernous sinus. The inferior ophthalmic vein, it runs below the optic nerve. It receives tributaries from the lacrimal sac and its lower orbital muscle and the eyelid, and either by the joint or superior ophthalmic veins, and drains directly into the cavernous sinus. Now this is the figure of the medial squint of the right eye. This is the figure of the arteries of the eyeball. This is the figure of the branches of the ophthalmic artery. Now the lymphatics of the orbit. The lymphatics drain into the particular peripheral lymph nodes. Nerves of the orbit. The optic nerve oculomotor with the ciliary ganglion, trochlear branches of the ophthalmic and maxillary division of the trigeminal abducens and sympathetic nerves, orally optic nerve, ciliary ganglion and the sympathetic nerves. And the optic nerve uh, is the nerve of the sight. It made up of the axon of the cells and ganglion layer of the retina. It emerged from the eyeball 3 or 4 nasal into the posterior fold. Now, relation over the artery orbit, it apex of the orbit, the nerve is closely surrounded by the recti muscles, and the central arteries is veins of the retinal pierce, and the optic nerve is crosses superiorly by the ophthalmic artery, and the optic nerve is crosses inferiorly the nerve of the medial rectus, and the near or the eyeball is now is surrounded by the fat. Now structures, there are about 1.2 million myelinated fibers is optic nerve. The optic nerve is not a nerve, it is a streak sense. It is actually a track. It cannot regenerate after it is cut. Now clinical anatomy. The anastomosis between the tributaries of the facial nerve and the ophthalmic veins may result in the spread of the infection from the orbital and nasal ganglion. The optic neuritis is characterized by the pain in the and behind the end of the ocular movements. The common causes of the demyelinated disease of the central nervous system, and the optic nerve has no neurolemasis, there is no power of regeneration. Optic atrophy may be caused by the variety of the disease. Now, ciliary ganglion is a peripheral parasympathetic ganglion placed in the course of the oculomotor nerve, and it lies near the apex of the orbits between the optic nerve and the end of the lateral rectus muscle. Now parasympathetic roots arise from the nerve to be inferior obliques. Now here the branches the ganglion gives of 8 to 10 short ciliary nerves which divided into 15 to 12 branches and 10 pierce in the sclera around the entrails. Now lacrimal nerve, this is the smallest and there is a 3 terminal branches of the ophthalmic nerve. It enters the orbits through lateral part of the superior orbital fissure and runs forward along the upper border of the lateral rectus muscles. The frontal nerve, this is the largest and of 3 terminal branches of the ophthalmic nerve. It begins in the lateral wall of the anterior part of the cavernous sinus. It enters the orbit through the lateral part of the superior orbital fissure. Superior trochlear nerve emerges from the orbital nerve, and the superior orbital nerve emerges through the orbital through the supra orbital notch of the foramen about the finger. Now this is the figure of the branches of the right optic nerve, and second figure is the branches of the nasociliary. Nasociliary nerves, this is the one of the terminal branches of the ophthalmic division of the terminal nerve, and the communicating branch, each branch is communicating by long ciliary nerves, posterior ethmoidal nerves, inferior trochlear nerves, and the anterior ethmoidal nerve. Intraorbital nerve, it is communicating the maxillary nerve. It is enter the inferior orbital fissure first to the inferior orbital groove and infraorbital canal and the foramen. It is another is a zygomatic nerve, is branches of the maxillary nerve, the sympathetic nerves of the orbit, the dilatation of papilla of the iris and the sympathetic nerve, and the branches of the ophthalmic division. There is a frontal, supratrochial, supraorbital, nasalic, the branches of ciliary ganglion 2 to 3, long ciliary nerve and posterior ethmoidal branch, and the lacrimal branches of the upper eyelid of the supraorbital branches.